Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Ian Faison from Vetrepreneur. I'm here with Andrew Goldner from GrowthX and the GrowthX Academy. Andrew, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing today, Ian?
Yeah, well, it's great because we're talking about entrepreneurs and how we can help you build more revenue. So tell us a little bit about GrowthX and what you guys do.
Well, so GrowthX, as the name implies, is all about growth. I mean, we started out as a venture capital fund, and we were focused on helping earliest of founders figure out how not so much to finish their product, but how to market it and make money. And so we're focused on growth. We're a seed stage fund, and what we're looking for are people that are not only creating exquisite and interesting products that are going to change the world, but understand that it's also as important, if not more important, to get those products into the hands of customers and to do so in a way that you can build a sustainable business out of them. And so that's why we're called GrowthX. We're a handful of growth experts, and not just growth hackers, but true growth experts, understanding all the customer acquisition models and how to go out and build a business, whether it's tech or non-tech. I mean, as a fund, we invest in tech, but the expertise that we have and the viewpoints that we espouse are equally as valuable as someone opening up, a store offline as it is to some tech venture.
You know, and it's great talking about growth. We do our weekly Vetrepreneur growth sessions. Growth is such a hot topic right now because blending the idea of sales and marketing, market development, and design are so critical for companies to understand. No matter what size you are, you have to know how to bring people in and ultimately sell more. Today we want to talk about 3D revenue. So you and this is not kind of 3D, we're not selling 3D products here, but you wrote an article about 3D revenue. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of why you wrote that.
Sure. So 3D revenue is revenue that's predictable, profitable, and scalable. It's what I refer to as the three dimensions of revenue. The reason I wrote the article is because over our experiences time and time again getting pitched by startups that are looking for some of our capital in the fund, they tend to spend a lot of time talking about how much revenue they have. And they've gotten to a point now where if they had more capital, they'd be able to scale the revenue. But when I got into the details of that revenue, when I asked them which of those dollars were profitable dollars or which of those dollars were predictable dollars, they didn't know the answer to it. And so I started thinking in my head in terms of real world, right? If I had a block of wood and I put it in front of you, and I said, Ian, can you tell me what the height, the length, and the width of this block of wood is? You'd look at it, and just by experience or intuition, you'd say it's probably 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. For some reason, you might actually have a ruler. You might actually take it out and tell me exactly what it is. And yet, when you think of the revenue dollars in the bank account, all founders really think about is how many dollars are in that account. But what ends up creating an unsustainable business, and one that's certainly not venture capable with our money, is one that is looking to go out and stack more unprofitable dollars, or are chasing dollars that are less profitable than other dollars. And so the idea of 3D revenue is don't just focus on how many dollars you have in the bank or how many dollars you're getting every single month from customers. It really is about thinking at the earliest stages of your company, which of those dollars are the best, right? What are the most profitable, most predictable, most scalable kind of dollars? Getting all the signal to noise, getting the signal noise ratio out, so you're only focusing on those dollars that have those three dimensions of revenue, and then going and getting more of those.
And I think, one of the things that's really interesting that you've talked about is how to differentiate sales and market development. So before you know kind of how your money is working, where it's coming from, all of that, most founders, I would say, go out and once they've created an MVP or they have a product or a new product, they're just going to go push and sell that. And what you've seen is that in a lot of cases, that's not the right decision. So talk to me about the difference between sales and then market development.
Right. I mean, in my view, the differentiation between sales and market development, sales is the pursuit of revenue for the purpose of profit, whereas market development is the pursuit of revenue for the purpose of learning. Our viewpoint is that at the seed stage, the early stage, the starting stages of a company, right? What classic definition of a startup is just a company in search of a profitable, predictable revenue model, right? So this is a company that's trying to figure out where those predictable and profitable dollars are going to come from. The urge, once you have a product that you think meets some need or solves some problem, and you've gotten some early customers, is to go out and just try to get as many different additional customers as you can, because that's more revenue. And what we're saying is, at the earliest stages, you're not pursuing those customers to find profitability, even though ultimately that's the goal. The more efficient way to get to profitability, the more efficient way to get to break even, is to spend that early time determining what are the best types of customers to go after. What is the most effective means to be in touch with those people? What is the most effective messaging that can be repeatable and scalable to get those customers interested in talking to you? And then how do you convert them into customers? Again, collect as much learning as you can from those interactions, not so you can go out and get more profit instantly, but so that you can recognize the patterns from all of the conversations and the customer outreach and the customer interaction that you and your product are having, so that you can come up with a model that you know with relative certainty, after X amount of effort, Y amount of time, and Z amount of dollars, you're going to get yourself a customer. So what I like to think about is the physical world. Back to my block of wood example, I tend to operate better in the physical world. So I think about that factory, or I think about just that machine, right? What if you could build a machine that you put a quarter into, you cranked a handle, and $1 came out? I mean, in the largest sense, that is what venture capital is looking for, because what I have is money, and money needs to solve that problem. And if you're telling me that you put a quarter in, you crank it, $1 comes out, but you don't have any more quarters, I'm going to give you bags of quarters, right? I can solve that problem. And so how do we take that back into an actual customer and something that's not physical, like a machine where you're putting a quarter into? Well, how do you come up with that same repeatable process, right? And so as you're interacting with the market, as you're learning about what the right profile of those customers are, and what the right acquisition methods are, and what the right methods are, and how long it takes, and how much money it costs, you're effectively in search of that path from stranger to revenue in a way that you can do it repeatably and predictably and the most profitably, because that then is something that you can solve by then scaling your sales force, because you have something scalable.
So if you have like entrepreneur one, there's two teams, two founding teams, both have 3 folks. Entrepreneur or founding team number 1, they have CEO is the product person. They have, hey, they're going to say the number, the COO is going to sell everything, and then their CTO is working on their tech. They sell like a software solution, whatever, SaaS product, whatever. And both teams do that. So you're saying team 1, the bad thing that they could do is say, hey, what's our total addressable market? Well, everybody needs this software, so it's every single company in the U.S. and we're going to focus on Fortune 500 or something like that. And then they're just going to go out and pound and sell that product to the entire market with kind of no discernible strategy or no discernible targeting. They're going to use a ton of different things. They're gonna try a million different ways to acquire customers. All the different types of marketing to acquire those customers, and they're just kind of look and be like, hey, we sold a bunch of stuff. So what is kind of team number 2 gonna do that's different than that, and how do they kind of break it down to get more information and data on the front end to make sure that they're selling it and marketing it effectively?
Well, I think the first of all is, is team number 1 focused on taking swags, right? Strategic wild ass guesses versus being hypothesis driven. I mean, to a certain extent, you are throwing up stuff on the wall to see if it can stick. The question is whether you're doing it randomly or you're taking a few steps of thought beforehand. It's not intended to be heavily difficult. This isn't rocket science. It's just giving yourself the space and time to think about it before you leap out of your chair and start acting and selling and trying to get customers to buy your product. It really is setting up a mechanism by which you can learn from the interactions you are having with the market, test hypothesis, take the information that you're gleaning from the interactions you're having with the market, and think about it and react to it, iterate it, and continue to test until you get as close as you can to optimal. I think the idea of iterating, testing, and optimizing is an easy thing to say, but the notion of something being optimal, I mean, it's hard to know when you're done. There isn't any real facet that says, okay, you're done now, this is optimized. So part of exercising judgment as a founder and a leader is understanding kind of when you've got something that you think is scalable. And so I think, you know, starting out with hypothesis, in your example, right, if you're talking about a SaaS software that's helps small to medium businesses that help them run more efficiently, and you could arguably sell it to every small to medium business in the country, in the world, rather than going out there and just doing whatever you can to get your message out there as wide as far as you can, to bring as many small and medium businesses as you can, thinking that total addressable market of the SMB space is X. It really is starting with hypotheses that can be just as simple as, you know, can we obtain a list of the SMBs in the United States or the area of the United States in which we live in now, because that is, you know, non-scalable growth door to door is not a bad way to go to start. What are the ones that we think will be more likely to not just adopt our software, but software generally? We might start with some hypothesis that potentially a auto repair garage may or may not be more or less interested or susceptible to using a software product than, let's say, a more technologically advanced small and medium business that's already using software. And so the idea of incorporating software for different parts of their business may be something they're more or less receptive to. And so it can be just as simple as that, you know, and it's spending the time to think about what those hypotheses are, to think, well, of every single customer in the world that might be interested in my product, what are the ones that I think will be the easiest to attract, the easiest to get their attention repeatedly. You know, what you don't want to do is every single time you do a customer outreach, start from scratch and figure out who the person is you need to speak with, what's the right thing you need to say, how often you're going to need to communicate in order to get to the right person to ultimately have a conversation around needs and wants and how you can help them, rather than every single time just making it up from scratch. And so, again, I think the differences between Team 1 and Team 2 is just pursuing revenue wherever you get it, because the more dollars you have, the better it's going to be, versus spending those early days being very focused on figuring out what the easiest dollars are to get over and over and over again. It pays out in the long run.
And I think so in practice that looks like, you know, Team 1 was doing, you know, they were going to events, they were using Facebook ads, they were doing, you know, like a bunch of different things, right? And Team 2 is, you know, hone the fact that if they go to, you know, whatever it is, the GrowthX meetups or whatever it is, that they're meeting people, having real conversations, and turning those into high quality leads, and that those leads love their product and are very happy customers and will tell their friends.
Yeah.
They know that if the more and more meetups they go to, the more and more high quality leads they're going to get, and they know that, you know, they can put more time and effort into that particular way of acquiring customers,
right? And
that will result in, you know, dividends that are much higher than, you know, just kind of guessing which channels are working and which ones aren't.
And it's not just the channels. I mean, kind of the classic Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm, right? You know, the only people definitionally that do business with startups are innovators and early adopters, right? That by definition are the only type of people who will do business with a startup, right? That old saying that nobody got fired for hiring IBM, right? That's where it came from. I mean, the bell curve of customers are later stage laggard technology adopters. They're looking for references. They're worried that they're going to look bad to their management or they're going to lose their job if this doesn't work out. Because why in the world would you do business with this unproven person, this unproven company, this unproven product? People that do business with unproven companies or unproven products are innovators. They're early adopters. But most people aren't innovators and early adopters. Most people will not go to a restaurant that doesn't have a Yelp review.
Yeah.
And that's why. They, even if it's a perfect stranger, they want to get on Yelp and read the reviews of a bunch of people who have gone there. So, you know, it just feels less risky. yes, some people have said it was great and some people said it was not so great, but I'm not the first person to try this. But obviously there's a lot of people who would love to be the first Yelp reviewer, right? Yeah. And so, the reason this is important is the earliest adopters, the people that are willing to do business with you because you're a new business, you just opened a store and I'm your newest customer, is you need them to come into your store, enjoy that product, realize the value of that product you offer now, not the one you're planning to offer in 6 months from now. So they walk out of the store and put up that Yelp review, or tell all their friends, or put up something on Facebook, and that becomes a referential promoter. That referential promoter is how people who aren't comfortable being first adopters get comfortable doing business with that store. And when you're talking to B2B, and this is a job and I need to do it well and satisfy my management, well, a lot of people have done business with this company before. They seem to like the product, so I'm okay to use it. And the reason that this is very important, and this sounds esoteric, but it's a very important initial step with a company, is if you're not thinking about those sub-segments of your marketplace that are the ones who are most ready, willing, and able to appreciate and enjoy the value of the product you offer now, you can't have those referential promoters to help you cross that chasm and get to the later stage of technology adopters, or the later stage adopters of whatever, your new store. But it has to be a referential promoter. In the case of a restaurant, I'll go to Yelp. Doesn't matter who the people are. I don't know who they are. They're just reviewing it, and I'll read it. But when a business is looking to buy something for their business, they look to other similar businesses to make their purchasing decision. So in the case of the example we were talking about earlier, which is the SaaS product, which is making any SMB more efficient, that might be true, but when a plumber is looking to make a decision about a piece of software to make his plumbing business more efficient, they're not going to reach out to a dentist's office and ask, how did that software work for you? They aren't going to look to other dentist offices for that referential promotion. They're going to look to other plumbers or maybe other members of different trades to help them make that decision. And so what you've identified as one market, in that example, is actually two markets. Dentists and plumbers don't reference each other when they make purchase decisions. That makes it two markets. And the reality is, for most of these, when the company comes to me and says, look at the total addressable market is $5 trillion, it's dozens and dozens of markets. Yeah. And if you're a startup, it's going to be a miracle for you to accomplish one of those markets. But if you go back to your Team 1 and Team 2 example, if Team 1 isn't focusing on that and they're just grabbing up revenue from wherever they can, they may get excited because they have a lot more revenue than Team 2 does, but it's unfocused revenue. They're not going to cross the chasm. It's more than one market. Those people will churn because they weren't ready to appreciate and use that product. And some of it's going to be unprofitable, unpredictable, unscalable dollars, and those really aren't that helpful.
Yeah, and I'd say that once they get to the point where they're like, where our team of 3 is making, we're making $20,000 a month. All right, let's hire the sales team now. And then it's like, they hire 4, 5, 6 sales reps, and they're just like, sell. But they don't really have any data on what's worked in the past. So it's like, and you've been selling sales products or SaaS products for the past 5 years. You all know exactly what to do. Go do it.
It's a classic example. I mean, it's a brilliant example. It's very well explained by Mark Leslie, the founder of Veritas Software, in one of the seminal articles, at least in our space, published in the Harvard Business Review, called The Sales Learning Curve. Mark and a partner take the concepts of the manufacturing learning curve and very adeptly apply it to the notion of the sales learning curve. And they came up with this concept of the Renaissance rep. What we call market developer, Mark coined the phrase Renaissance rep, but we mean the same thing. And we talk about that classic example that a startup has either made or will make, which is going out and getting that first sales hire, that VP of sales before it's ready. The analogy that I like to use is if you owned a beautiful plot of land on a beach, So you owned a significant amount of, a nice tract of sand. I don't care if you hire the greatest architect, right, who's ever architected to create, the most magnificent building ever made. You build it on sand, it's going to fall over. And it sounds silly, but going out and hiring that VP of sales before you've laid a foundation, that person is set up for failure. And the reason is because that coin-operated VP of sales is going to show up and is going to want the playbook. They are not going to be prepared or interested in creating the playbook. That coin-operated VP of sales is going to be interested in handing the leads. They're not going to be interested in identifying the funnel, understanding the right acquisition to go from stranger to market qualified or product qualified lead to sales qualified lead and customer. And that coin-operated salesperson is going to be looking for a compensation structure that is aligned to sales, which is revenue in the pursuit of profit. And they're going to have the behaviors to go out and grab that revenue pursuit of profit. But you're needing someone who's aligned to revenue for the pursuit of learning. And so it's a classic error. So again, Mark Leslie, the Renaissance rep, or what we refer to as the market developer, is the best first hire on the sales and marketing side when you've broken the founding team. That's what you need to do. You need to break the founding team, and that's a great thing to go raise money for.
What do you mean by break the founding team?
So the founding team are collectively the chief marketing and sales officers. Once you have your minimum viable product out there and there's something that satisfies a need or a want or a desire, if you're B2B, people buy for 3 reasons: save money, make money, stay out of jail. So if you've got something that satisfies one of those needs and it's viable enough that there's some value for early customers to extract and interact with you to find that product market fit, because you can't find product market fit without interacting with the product in the market, right? So there has to be a give and take between the product and your market so you can improve, right? But you have something minimally viable. Once you have that, it's all hands on deck to interact with the marketplace and to get that feedback from customers in search of that 3-dimensional revenue. Once you have defined that block of wood and you know the predictability, scalability, and profitability, the ideal customer profile, right? The right customer acquisition campaign and methods and methodology, where are you going to go find those top of the funnel leads to bring them in and through your funnel, what the right framework is to attract them into that funnel and move them through the funnel and convert them into opportunities. Once you know how to do that in a reasonably predictable way, you're not ready for that hire. So when I say break the founding team, well, I can't deal with it if there's too many leads coming my way. There's too many conversations coming my way. There's too much information coming my way. Like, I just can't handle it anymore. Like, there's too many qualified leads for me to keep up with selling. There's too much information for me to keep up with, right? And so, some member or collectively the members of that founding team are together the market developers. But until you've come up with that formula, until you know what that kind of predictable, profitable revenue is, and everybody is too busy to keep up, right? Like, what do we love hearing as venture capitalists? Well, I mean, we've got 22 businesses that have expressed an interest from one of the outbound campaigns, and we just simply can't keep up with it. We cannot get out to have that sales call and have that conversation and understand what their needs are and see if there's a good match. That's a great problem. That's what I mean by breaking, right? If you have an account rep, but until that account rep just falls behind because they simply can't keep up with the number of market qualified leads that the sales development rep has created, you don't need another account rep.
Yeah.
So you really don't need that VP of sales or that first sales hire until you have the playbook written, right? Until you understand what that revenue engine looks like and where those leads are being created from and market qualified or product qualified from. And then, need more people to actually close the sale. The CEO needs to go back to being the CEO. The VP of product needs to go back to being the VP of product. We now have the initial semblance of that machine that you stick a quarter in and crank it, and a dollar comes out, I got to go find someone to start cranking.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good advice, and I think that, you know, based off of where you hit that that number of customers or that number of interaction where it's like finally becoming, you know, too many, I think that's a really good metric to use, and whatever metric you kind of create for that of, hey, we're too busy, with knowing exactly why we're getting these, I think that's great.
The one thing I will say that, and you bring up a really good point, which is kind of the metrics. You know, a fundamental stumbling block is the failure of the founding team to instrument and to create behaviors. You know, you go out and you spend that money and you're excited, you've got your Salesforce implementation, and you realize it's empty. It's not going to do you any good unless you have the behaviors to take the interactions that you're having and record it somewhere. It can't be in a spreadsheet on someone's hard drive or even a Google Drive in siloed areas. It can't just simply be in someone's head. You don't need to go out and spend money on fancy software if you're not ready for it. I'm not saying that from day one you need an expensive CRM or outbound tool. You can start out by just simply using a pad of paper or a Google Sheet or a Google Doc. Because what the most important step is, you know, are you thinking about what needs to be tracked? And are you tracking it? Are you tracking the number of conversations that you're having? Are you paying attention to what things are being clicked or opened and what things aren't? When you're talking to a customer, whether it's at a trade show or you just happen to bump into them at a bar, are you not only listening, hopefully you're listening, right? You're listening to what they're sharing, but then where is that information going? It needs to be recorded somewhere so that you can take a very horizontal view of it and begin to pattern recognize. And you'd be surprised, even at the teams that understand the difference between market development and sales and are very focused on creating something that's predictable and profitable and scalable, they're not keeping track of the right metrics. They don't have the right behaviors in place, and so there's no way to track action and conversion.
It's a great point too. The networking piece of being able to track what you're doing while you're networking is another key thing. Like, hey, I went to a trade show and I texted 700 people, and it's, what do you have? 700 business cards. Like, I mean, like, yeah, we'll follow up with emails, but what did we learn? Like, what were the things that we learned from those conversations? And how do we look to implement that? One of the, I was at HustleCon, and the CEO or the founder of Latote was talking about how for his first, I forget how many customers, a lot. I think for like the first 18 months, he spoke with every single customer personally, and like went through, you know, whether it's just throughout the process of customer success, just to make sure that like he was checking in and talking to them and taking that information. And they tweaked their product a ton of times. They iterated a ton of times based off of the feedback from that. But because he was recording it and sharing it with the rest of the group, they were able to do that.
And you know, not being ruled by the tyranny of the anecdote, you know, not letting any one customer take your product journey on a roadmap of their own, right? And making sure that the customer feedback is what's shaping the product roadmap. It shouldn't just be the founding team sitting around a table thinking about what features or functions they think would be interested or they think the customers would want or what sounds interesting and different and revolutionary. So I commend that CEO for shaping their product roadmap based purely on market feedback. But again, if they haven't taken the time to think about what the profiles are of the most ideal initial customers because of where they're going to get to break even in the most efficient way, they may be taking their product on an inefficient journey. And so, you know, again, the example I like to talk about is, you know, if you said, hey, I want to have a conversation with you today, can you please prepare a deck? because you didn't ask the question about who the audience was. And if you haven't taken the time to collect the information and to really think about and formulate of every customer that could ever buy your product, which are the ones that are going to most effectively and efficiently buy it and enjoy it, and do so in a repeatable, predictable way across that customer type, then what customer feedback are you listening to?
Yeah.
And so I know the challenge. I've been a founder, I still am a founder. I know the challenge of bootstrapping and getting to break even and staring a customer order in the face and turning it down because it's going to be a distraction. But turning unprofitable, unpredictable, unscalable revenue down is a very, very important thing.
Yeah, that's great feedback. So one more thing and then we'll get out of here. So what is the biggest thing that you see founders fail on that you've worked with? What's that kind of thing that you see time and time again that folks are kind of either missing the boat on or just cause them to be unsuccessful?
Well, listen, I can tell you for GrowthX, the reason we founded GrowthX Academy, right, which is a 12-week intense program teaching the entrepreneurial selling, the growth marketing, and the user experience design skill sets. In a nutshell, that is it, right? Why did we start GrowthX Academy? Because as venture capitalists, the number one reason we can't find more companies to invest in, it's the same reason that our portfolio companies that fail will fail, and that is because you have a significant number of people who are product focused, who understand how to create product, who may have come through an accelerator and they know how to pitch and raise money, but founders that lack the ability, the interest, the intellect, the intuition, not to finish their product and raise money, but to market their product and make money. And so it's, companies aren't failing now because the technology doesn't work, by and large. They're failing because they don't understand how to get into the hands of customers in a predictable, scalable, and profitable way. For us and for GrowthX Academy, and what we teach for those that are looking to transition into tech or to kind of level up into tech, is every time you think about sales, every time you think about selling, and if you retract from it because you're afraid of it or you don't understand it, replace the term sell or selling with help or helping. That really is the approach, the proper approach to doing disruptive product launching and innovation, is focusing on not what you do, but what you do for the customer, focusing not on your product, but focusing on the customer and the problems you're solving or the needs that you're meeting or the situation that you're addressing. And that, in a nutshell, really is the number one catch-all mistake, is an over-focus on a product and a lack of interest and a lack of an awareness on the marketing, sales, and user experience side of the equation. And so when you outsource it to that first hire of sales and it doesn't work out and you're surprised why, kind of that's why.
Well, that's a really good point, and I think that you hear founders say, well, I don't want to be the pushy salesperson, and they say, marketing is kind of BS. And you're like, actually, no, that's not. Neither of those are true. And if you don't want to be the pushy salesperson or the BS marketer, you don't have to be, because you shouldn't be either of those two.
And the problem is that less than 10% of all colleges and universities in the United States have even a single course on sales. Yeah. The number one degree held by salespeople globally is liberal arts. When people think of marketing, they think of Super Bowl advertising or the Goodyear blimp. When they think of selling, they think of Glengarry Glen Ross. They think of hunting, they think of objection handling, they think of pushiness. And so it's just, it's just a different mindset. Craig Wortman, professor of entrepreneurial selling at the University of Chicago Booth School, who is just, one of the best in the world at this. One of the practices that he shared with me that is with his students is at the beginning of the class, each session, he puts up on the board, he just writes salesperson or salesman. And then he invites the students to raise their hand and offer up, adjectives and nouns to describe salesperson. And you get very pejorative, very sharp words. And then he writes entrepreneur. and goes through the same exercise. And it's amazing the romantic and flowery and thoughtful and complimentary and idealistic words that come out. But the reality is salesman and entrepreneur are the same. You are the chief salesperson when you're an entrepreneur, but what people think of as sales, it's not selling. I mean, it's certainly not what we teach, and it's certainly not what we look out for at GrowthX when we're looking to deploy capital. And so it's important, whether it's at GrowthX Academy or any of the free online resources that you can get now on the internet, it's important for founders to pay equal attention to market development as they do product development.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I appreciate it. Thank you, Andrew. Find him at Goldner on Twitter, and then find them at GX Academy and GrowthX.com and GXAcademy.com.
You got it.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you,
guys.
Talk soon.
Take care.